Hello Mila, hello Jack. Hello everybody else who's watching, and welcome to Storytime with Grandad. Today's book is called The Good Tiger. The good tiger lived in a zoo, in a little house of his own which was painted blue. In this zoo he was the only tiger. Across the way lived two lions. Their house was a bigger one. It was orange. The lions always made a noise. They were horrid to each other and fought over their dinners. They ate all the meat they were given and wanted more. But the tiger never wanted to eat anything but cake. He sat quietly all day, looking out of the window. He often thought, if there were another tiger here, we would play, not fight. I would never be horrid to another tiger. The zookeeper saw that the poor tiger needed a friend. But buying another tiger would cost a great deal of money, and the zoo never had enough. Many children came to visit the zoo. They looked at the lions, but only from far away. They did not go near them. The children were right. But the children all went and stood around the good tiger and fed him with cake. The lions watched from across the way and were jealous, and that made them more horrid than ever. Many children came, but the tiger liked a boy called Bob and a girl called Sarah best of all. They used to visit him every day. Bob and Sarah were not brother and sister. They had met in front of the tiger's house. There they used to stay every afternoon until the zookeeper told them they had to go, for at 6 he had to shut up the zoo. Bob and Sarah would walk away together, talking to one another about the tiger. The poor tiger had nothing to do then but to go to bed. One day Sarah had an idea. Why don't I ask the tiger to my house? Bob asked, what would your mother say? I don't know, Sarah said. Well, try, Bob said. You invite the tiger for Wednesday, then you can ask me to come along. I will, Sarah answered. They said goodbye until the next day. Sarah thought it would be best not to tell her mother that there would be a tiger coming for tea. She would just say she wanted to ask a friend. Then when the tiger walked in, her mother would see in a minute how good he was. So that night Sarah asked her mother, can I have a party on Wednesday? Why, yes, said her mother. I'll be glad to help you. How many friends would you like to ask? Sarah said, 2 will be enough. But may we please have every kind of cake and ice cream and jelly and everything else nice that you can think of. Sarah's mother laughed and said, why not? Then Sarah knew she could ask the tiger. On Wednesday, Sarah stayed at home to get ready for the party. Bob would bring the tiger to Sarah's house. When Bob got to the blue house, the good tiger was waiting. He had licked his fur all over to make it shine. He had waved his tail in front of the looking glass to see how to wave it in the prettiest way. Bob opened the door of the blue house, and out came the tiger. Nobody saw them but the 2 nasty lions. The 2 lions watched from across the way and were jealous. And that made them nastier than ever. They roared and roared, but nobody listened. Bob and the good tiger walked out of the zoo. The tiger liked being outside the zoo. He looked around at the streets and houses and trees and was pleased with everything. He liked looking in at the shop windows. He looked at the motor cars and thought, I'd like to go for a ride in one of those. But every time Bob and the tiger turned down a new street, everybody in the street started to run. A town must be a place where everybody runs, thought the tiger. So the tiger ran, to be like everybody else. And Bob had to run too. In this way the 2 of them soon came to Sarah's home. Sarah had everything ready. She had roses on the table, she put out the Sunday best cup, and, as a surprise for the tiger, Sarah had bought a nice big tiger striped balloon. The balloon was on the floor near the table, and Sarah's mother, in a pretty dress with flowers all over it, washed the dishes and was waiting too. While they were waiting, in came fat Mrs. Jones. They had not asked her, but Mrs. Jones lived in the next house. She always wanted to see what was going on. Mrs. Jones saw the roses, the best cups, the many cakes, and the balloon, and said, "Oh, are you going to have a party?" Sarah said, "Yes, for my 2 friends." "Oh," said Mrs. Jones, 2 girls, or 2 boys, or a girl and a boy?" "One of them is a boy," said Sarah. As Mrs. Jones looked out of the window to see if the guests were coming, she said, "Why, everybody is running." "Isn't that funny?" said Sarah's mother. "Is there a parade somewhere? I can't hear a band." And she opened the door. In ran the good tiger, with Bob after him. Mrs. Jones took one look at the tiger, then gave a high hop onto the top of the table. She danced about among the cakes and quacked like a duck. Sarah's mother stayed on the floor but went white in the face. Then she ran to Sarah to pull her away from the tiger. "Quick, Sarah, quick!" called out her mother. "Run, hide, climb up on something." And what about Bob? Bob just stood there. You see, Bob thought Sarah had already told her mother, and so she should have. So now he was in a spot. No good bringing along a tiger when no one has heard about it, and no one wants it. "Oh, Sarah," Bob said. The tiger did not know what to do, so he sat down. He was glad to sit down, because he was tired. He was a strong tiger, but he had never run so fast nor so far. He never ran when he was inside the zoo. There simply wasn't room. And till today, he had never been asked out. How should he act at a party? The tiger did not know, for no one had told him. When Mrs. Jones took her great hop onto the table, the tiger was a bit surprised at first. She is too fat a lady, he thought, to be doing that. But if that is the thing to do at the party, I'll try it too. So the tiger jumped up on the table with Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones called, "Help! Help!" Then she gave a great big quack and hopped off the table. This is a fine game, the tiger thought, so he hopped off the table after Mrs. Jones. "Our tiger likes to play," Bob told Mrs. Jones. But she ran out into the street and back to her house. She kept on quacking. She ran to her telephone, but she couldn't remember whom to ring up. The tiger was glad Mrs. Jones had left. She was too fat, he thought, and not a friend. He went over to Sarah's mother. "Let's play a game," he wanted to say, but he couldn't talk people talk. To please her, the tiger started waving his tail and blowing into her ear. "Oh, mother," said Sarah, "he is a good tiger." "He all but ate Mrs. Jones," her mother answered. "No," Bob said, "all he eats is cake." But Sarah's mother was not listening. She was looking about for something to hit the tiger with. Nothing was near except the striped balloon. Sarah's mother picked up the balloon and threw it hard at the tiger, as hard as she could. "Come, this is fun," thought the tiger. He jumped high into the air to catch the balloon, and he caught it with his big white teeth. So then, well, you can guess. The balloon blew up with a bang. There was no balloon, and in a minute more there was no tiger. He had never heard a great big bang before. So out of the door he flew, and he ran and ran. "There goes our tiger," said Bob sadly. "Oh, mother," said Sarah. "Oh, mother, what have you done?" "I am sorry," said Sarah's mother, and she was. "But how was I to know?" She asked. "Sometimes tigers are bad. You should have told me he was coming to the party." "And now he's gone," Bob said, "and he didn't even have any cake." "Let's go after him quickly," Sarah said. "Yes, run fast. Go this minute," said Sarah's mother. So Bob and Sarah ran to the door. They looked all around, but there was no tiger. Meanwhile, the tiger ran down the street. Nobody was glad to see me, he thought sadly. There was nobody in that whole long street, nobody, not even a car or a dog. But what the tiger did see was an open car waiting outside a house. Again the tiger thought, I'd like to ride in one of those things. So he jumped right into the back seat and waited for the car to move. But he was so tired from running, he rolled himself into a ball, and in less than a minute he was asleep. He was still sleeping when a little girl named Elsa and her father came out of the house in a great hurry. They got into the car as quickly as they could. They were going to a picnic in the forest. They did not think of looking at the back seat before they started. It never occurred to them to expect a tiger in the car. And so they drove off. Elsa's dad saw some clouds in the sky and said to Elsa, It might rain. Did you bring your raincoat? Elsa answered, It's on the back seat. At least it was there yesterday. So she looked to see, and then she made a funny sound. And her dad said, Well, look and see. So she looked to see, and then she made a funny sound. Elsa's dad said, Well, what are you looking at? I think there's a tiger there, said Elsa. A tiger on the back seat. Elsa's dad jumped. The car all but ran off the road. What's he doing? Nothing at the moment, said Elsa. He's asleep. Her dad asked, How big is the tiger? Elsa looked again. He's rolled up in a ball. But at that he takes up our whole back seat. What should we do, Dad? If we were to stop, said her dad, we would wake him. I think we'd better keep going. So they kept going, but slowly, so as not to wake the tiger. He looks so peaceful asleep, Elsa said, looking around. He won't look peaceful, said her dad, if he wakes up. What will we do, she asked, when we get to the forest? We'll get out of the car quietly and hope that the tiger will get out, said her dad. Tigers make their homes in forests. Once this tiger gets to the forest, he might be pleased. Let's hope so. Well, I hope so, said Elsa. I should not like him to eat us, or even bite us. And they drove to the forest. Meanwhile, on the back seat, the tiger was having a happy dream. In his dream, he was a baby tiger once more. All around were trees, bright green trees, and the sun was hot. In his dream, the tiger knew where he was. This was the forest, his own forest. In his dream, he hopped and jumped, and on the back seat of the car, the tiger hopped and jumped and hit his head on the car door, and woke up on the back seat of the car. Well, thought the tiger, I did want to go for a ride, but who is taking me for this ride? All the tiger could see was Elsa's back, and she had a hat on. Elsa was just about Sarah's size, so the tiger thought, Why, I'm riding with Sarah. The tiger was so glad, so happy then, he thought, I'll show her I love her. He climbed across the seat, pushed out his face, and blew into Elsa's ears to say hello. Elsa was too afraid to cry out. She touched her dad's arm. He looked at the tiger and shouted, Shoo! This frightened the tiger as much as the balloon's bang had done. He jumped out of one side of the car and ran into the forest. Elsa and her dad jumped out of the other side and ran all the way to their picnic. Bob and Sarah, meanwhile, looked for the tiger on every street. They went inside houses and looked under beds and up the chimneys. They asked everybody they saw, and everybody they saw said, Yes, there was a tiger, but we ran, so we didn't see where he went. Nobody cares, said Sarah, starting to cry. A pretty lady looked out of her window and said, I saw a tiger ride by in an open car. Bob said, Please, which way was it going? The nice lady said, Down that way, and pointed towards the forest. There's a picnic being held there. Then she drew her head in. Bob and Sarah went on in a great hurry. At the far edge of the town they saw black clouds over the forest. They thought of their tiger in the rain and lost, and with nowhere to go. And they were very, very worried. By now the rain was falling in the forest. It came down so hard it made a noise in the trees. And in the forest, under the leaves, all had turned dark. Mice ran to hide in their holes, so did rabbits. Squirrels had their tails up over their backs. All the deer moved around looking for somewhere to keep dry. None of the birds could sing, they were too wet. Because of the rain, the picnic had broken up and everyone, including Elsa and her father, had gone home. But where had the tiger gone to in all this rain? Rain or not, he was having a good time. He was in the forest at last. This was not the forest of his dreams. There was no hot sunshine and the trees were dark because of the rain. But I do not care. This is where my home is, the tiger thought. This is the forest. And then he thought, they were good to me back there in the zoo. That was a nice house they gave me, a pretty blue house. But I don't want a house, especially a house near those quarrelsome lions. Maybe, though, Sarah will ask me to her house again. Houses are all right to visit. Then the tiger thought again, how will Sarah find me here? Sarah will think I am lost, so will Bob. Oh, I have not been kind. Oh, what shall I do? And for the first time, the tiger started to cry. While he was crying on the edge of the forest, Bob and Sarah came along with pieces of cake they'd found at the rained-out picnic. The tiger, hearing footsteps, looked up and smiled. This will be wet cake, Bob said to the tiger. But what did the tiger care? This is the best, nicest cake I have ever had, thought the happy tiger, and he blew in Sarah's ear and then in Bob's to say thank you. And it certainly was the best tea party anyone had ever had. The end. Goodbye, Mila. Goodbye, Jack. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.